Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And Kyle, this week I wanted to start off the episode with a little bit of cross-promotion for our Patreon content.
Oh.
Vis-a-vis. This is a tweet that went out at 6:03 p.m. today from @selfdefense, which is, of course, Patrick Kindlin.
Okay.
So I just want to get your thoughts on this. I want to get your take.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Live take incoming?
Mm-hmm. The Chris Carter written episodes of The X-Files are the weakest. Feel how you want to feel about that, brother.
Interesting. Now, I would have to go and look at a list, okay?
Yeah, I was looking at a list before this because here's in the current season what we've watched so far.
I will tell you that my favorite episodes of The X-Files are not written by Chris Carter. It's like, I want to say, what's his name, Glenn Morgan, or one of the Morgan brothers, and then Frank Spotnitz, I think is the other guy. Those are my favorites. And Chris Carter's, I mean, okay, but didn't Chris Carter, the one that I'm thinking of that I think I know is a Chris Carter episode, other than just some mythology stuff, is didn't he write the one with Walter White where his head's gonna explode or whatever?
I thought that wasn't that a Vince Gilligan episode?
I might be wrong, honestly. You might be right about that.
I honestly don't know. I literally I was talking to Jules I read her that tweet also, and I was realizing that I don't know much about who wrote episodes of my favorite shows. I think I really too much look at TV shows with kind of an auteur lens, where it's like, I know Chris Carter created the X-Files, but he doesn't write every episode. Same with like, you know Aaron Sorkin shows. Aaron Sorkin doesn't write every single episode. And so I don't know who writes individual episodes like at all.
Yeah, well, okay, so for those of you who maybe don't know, on our Patreon we do a weird television watch-along series, It Gets Weird TV. People vote on what shows we watch, and we've gotten to the third season of The X-Files, and people seem to really like The X-Files episodes, which, go figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I have started to pay a lot more attention to who the writers are on this show, because, The X-Files, it's a deeply important show for people who are interested in the paranormal and UFOs and stuff, and I love the show. And I will say that I think my favorite stuff is typically the team up of Glenn Morgan and James Wong. Yeah. And so those are the guys that I actually think of as the X-Files writers, at least for me.
I think they're also the people that were involved with Final Destination.
Oh, really?
Which is a fun thing for me. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I'll double check that, but go ahead.
Well, I don't know how hot of a take. I don't mean this in a negative way. I think that Pat Kindlin from Self-Defense Family and Drug Church, and I think some other projects, he's sorry,
Temple Mountain, and let's see, Lost Leader, and he had a country band for like a second that never released anything that I don't know what.
We can't do the obscure music nerd thing,
Pat
so
Picabi.
We have to do because we're a podcast, we have to do the thing that we're supposed to do, which is Pat Kindlin of the Axe to Grind podcast. He's a bit of a take factory.
Yeah, for sure. What I think it really comes down to is he basically is saying he prefers Monster of the Week over mythology
Sure.
episodes. If I had
No,
to
I
like
think
try to
that's-
rationalize his take there.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think that I would tend to agree. I think that there's some stuff in the mythology of X-Files that's really fun, but it gets like aggressively stupid after a while. But I don't know. I think that season 3 is like some of the best of the mythology and the best of the Monster of the Week stuff. But I definitely lean more towards Monster of the Week. And I'm looking here, and my favorite episodes, oh my god, okay, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, and War of the Coprophages, and Jose Chung's From Outer Space. Sorry, I just discovered that my favorite writer on the X-Files is actually Darren Morgan. Which
Okay.
we haven't talked about a couple of those yet, but we did watch Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose on the bonus
great.
show, which is a fantastic episode.
Yeah, and because he's the one that's always trying to kill the X-Files, right?
That's the
his
joke.
Mission statement.
I think that I can't remember whether it was Chris Carter or David Duchovny who said this, but they said that he wrote for the show as if he was trying to kill the show, which I think makes for interesting X-Files television. But
yeah, so it turns out the Final Destination people, it is James Wong who directed it and co-wrote the script, along with Glenn Morgan and Jeffrey Reddick. So
Okay.
I think all 3 of them are X-Files people.
well, the Wong and the Morgans, those are my X-Files guys, and yeah, I mean, I'm looking here at Chris Carter, and it's like there's.
I mean, he wrote Dwayne Barry, which we like.
I do like Dwayne Barry. Dwayne Barry's fun. And it's funny though, he only wrote for the first half of this 2-parter we just covered. We just talked about episodes 9 and 10, Nisei and 731.
And we did specifically say the one that he wrote is stronger than the one he didn't write.
That's true. We did say that. So it maybe can't be true, but like also it can't be like true in every case that he's the weaker episodes, but I think he hits a home run every once in a while. Fuck, Glenn Morgan also did Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. I think the Morgans are just the best. Well, that's an interesting way. Sorry, I got to cut this off before we go too deep down the X-Files rabbit hole. This is a different podcast, but you could think of this as a preview for It Gets Weird TV. This is the kind of shit we talk about. That's a good question. And to add to this little intro for this episode, Niall, I do have an email for you, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Hit me.
Now, I'm going to just read the title of this email to you, Niall, just so you can brace yourself.
Good.
But Alex from Australia, the title is Regarding Australian Spiders.
Oh, Jesus.
Because
okay.
I believe we had a conversation about this a number of episodes ago.
Yeah.
And Alex says, G'day, Niall and Kyle. I've been meaning to get back to you about Australian spiders. I apologize for the delay. I think the big spiders that you're referring to are the huntsmen. They can get quite big and hairy, but they are harmless. In fact, they keep other insects and pests under control in your house. Look, this is the common spider apologist position, of which I personally do. Like, I get it. I know I have a number of friends who do not like spiders. It's totally fine. But
and I want to make it clear.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're dangerous does not have any bearing on
Right.
if I'm scared of them. And also,
Sure.
because I'm scared of them doesn't mean that I don't think they should exist. I just
Sure.
want to make that clear. I think spiders fulfill a specific role in the ecosystem that is important. They just also, part of that role in the ecosystem is making me very scared.
See,
So,
leave it to Niall to have the level-headed take on the spider phobia, because I actually have another friend who I recently talked with about their fear of spiders, and they were just like, just fucking kill them all. So that's but yeah, I it's funny, there's I've seen a lot of images online because people will post like Australian content on the internet, and a lot of the content does reduce Australian to like a monstrous animal hellhole.
yeah.
Which is just I know is not actually the case, but the spiders do look scary because they're so fucking big. But if the huntsman's harmless, then that's chill, I guess. But Alex goes on to say they can be found both urban and bush areas. The spiders you want to watch out for are funnel web spiders and redbacks. I used to find these bad boys in my garage quite frequently, but it's not the spiders you should worry about. It's more snakes and those fucking asshole birds known as magpies.
Oh yeah, the magpies are vicious, aren't
shitheads, apparently. Yeah. Since it's now springtime in Australia, those fuckers are out swooping people now. If there's anything else you want to know or confirm about Australia, just mention my name and I'll get back to you blokes. Cheers. I love that we have an Australian correspondent in our email.
We now have an archaeology correspondent and an Australia correspondent. So we're slowly. We also have an Egyptology one, don't we? We have someone who knows a lot about Egypt.
We had somebody who was talking about Egyptian stuff with us, and I know who they are. I don't want to say names if people don't want to be named, but I know who they are. And then we actually have a person who shouts out, corresponds with me frequently through social media about a lot of alien stories. I guess what I'm getting at is we have a the listeners out there are fucking sick. Like, you're all awesome.
I love the Whack Pack. It's fantastic.
The Whack Pack. We got to find our own Baba Booey.
Yeah.
But so far I haven't seen a name that would be, a good correlate to Baba Booey. Like, Alex, if somebody has like a cool nickname that's similar to Baba Booey, just email us, let us know, and then we can start Baba Booeying with it.
I feel like you could put some stank on Weird John, but like
that's true, Weird John.
But that's the closest we get, and I think like we might need to workshop it a little bit if they want to take on that role.
Yeah, no. I honestly, what we could do is we could develop like a cryptid or paranormal entity based off of our listeners. I think if we smash some traits together, make a Frankenstein sort of monster. That could be our own Baba Booey. What the fuck even? Who the fuck? Baba Booey was like a joke nickname, right?
You want to know something? I don't fucking know anything about Howard Stern. I've seen various clips. I know he made a bunch of people ride a Sibian. And I've seen various clips like John Cena and
who rode a Sibian.
Some of the 9/11 stuff. Yeah, John Cena, who rode the Sibian. No, he talked about how much he likes fat women, which is like a very interesting. It's take it,
awesome.
Read into that what you will. Which, hey, we love fat women in this house. But it's. And I've seen a couple other, like, who is it? There's, I don't know. Basically, I've seen some like random clips, but whenever people talk about the specific like people in his Whack Pack, I don't know who any of these fucking people are or anything about them.
See, here's the thing. I feel like I had to have been born at least like 5 years earlier to have even caught whiff of that stuff. Which is one of the barriers for entry, because I haven't listened to Howard Stern either. But a lot of the people that I love in comedy grew up listening to Howard Stern. And so I've picked up, like, I know who Eric the actor is. I've heard the Baba Booey thing a bunch. I've seen some clips, but I've never really listened to it. Howard Stern, I don't know. It's just never something that I've really, I get it. Like, they get raunchy or whatever. They have,
I've seen a lot of
Hillary
Conan,
Clinton ride the Sibian or whatever. But but then Baba Booey. My actual this is so stupid. My actual introduction to Baba Booey is Tim and Eric doing an interview one time where Tim and Eric had a long era where they would not take interviews seriously and they would just fuck with the people interviewing them. And I've probably watched every single one of these interviews. And there's one really good one where it's like some sort of like early 2010s like pop culture internet show, and it like Tim and Eric are on there, and the show seems like it's fucking terrible. I won't get into the story here, but Tim and Eric are just fucking with them. At one point they start talking about how they're working on a show or something, and they start talking about the characters, and the characters are all named like Baba Booey, Fafa Fooey, Fla Fla Flunkai, or whatever. Like, they just list off these names. It's a very funny interview, and then I just had to be like, well, what the fuck is this? And I looked up Baba Booey and found out, it's like a dude's nickname, because he mispronounced a thing.
I'm just gonna wait. My here's how I'm gonna learn about Howard Stern things. I'm gonna go find the Howard Stern iceberg video on YouTube. That's probably like 8 to 10 hours long,
Jesus
and just
Christ.
mainline it all in one go. You know?
I don't think we need any more iceberg videos. Those get recommended to. I've never once clicked on an iceberg video, but they get recommended to me a lot on my YouTube.
I've tried to watch a couple, and it's like it just isn't. Even though my brain does really like that kind of structure to things, where it's like you have things by category and stuff, but
Sure.
like it doesn't. Watching those videos is just everything just goes in one ear out the other. It is like you don't learn anything.
Yeah, it's completely just garbage in, garbage out content. And I actually had a friend send me this icebergify thing. Have you seen this?
No.
Have you heard about this?
No, I heard about this. Yeah. No, I haven't.
You can apparently go to this website called Icebergify. This is not a promotion, but I guess it is. And it just takes 2 weeks of your Spotify data and tells you, like, here's what you've been listening to, and here's how, like, deep on the iceberg this is. And I think it's based on listenership. And I was like, my brain was, like, having trouble because my friend sent me theirs. And it's like their upper area of their iceberg, which I guess meant, like, more popular, was like Rainbow Kitten Surprise and Paramore and Fall Out Boy. And then, like, towards the very bottom next to Hop Along was Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos?
Yeah, sure.
Isn't Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos, aren't they like a didn't they have a hit song? Weren't they on the radio? Like,
no,
am I crazy,
they were just from Indianapolis.
Oh,
so
really?
They were low. They had. I think the closest it came was Broad Ripple is Burning. Maybe got placed in a movie or a TV show one time, but they had like a little bit of major label interest at some point. But I don't think they ever actually fully broke through.
Okay,
they just were like the local band that was of note.
Wow, I don't know. They were so present living in Indiana. I just assumed they were a big deal.
No, well, like they were of note, but they weren't. They're not famous, you know.
They're
similar in
so
success
much
than Hop Along, you know. Would be.
Okay, that's interesting. This explained a whole lot of things throughout my life. The very minimal interactions I've had with Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos.
That would be. I would be very interested to do that on mine, because I literally think I listened to something that may have never been listened to on Spotify before this last week, because I think it just went up, and I might have literally been one of the first person, one of the first 10 people to ever listen to this thing on Spotify.
Mine. I put mine in, and my iceberg is very silly. Because at the very top, we've got some... Can you guess what is at the very top of the iceberg? The most popular?
Sorry, most popular, not most listened. Gorillaz.
Yep, they're up there. It's Gorillaz, Charlie XCX, My Chemical Romance, and Deftones are up there.
Who got you into Deftones?
Nobody got me into Deftones. In fact, I think Deftones got played because it got queued up after I finished an album.
Okay.
I've never really. This is going to be tough for some people out there to hear, but I've never actually really listened to the Deftones, and I couldn't.
They're a band I've tried to get into once every 3 years for most of my adult life, and I bounce off them every time.
Interesting. Maybe I would like them. I don't know. I couldn't. I know I've heard them before, but I couldn't recall it with enough clarity to tell you if I like them or not. But yeah, that's up there. But at the very bottom is like Negative Land, Death Goals, stuff like that. But what I really love about mine is below the bottom of the iceberg, in the deep, deep, dark, abyssal sea, is just Ultra Deluxe.
Sure.
Right below everything, as you can see. So that's really fun. I don't know. There's just something very funny about this, to have Chibomato and Tropical Fuckstorm be on the same layer. Is just... and Drug Church and Callous
So
Cowboys.
I'm guessing that goes by like monthly listener data on
Probably.
Spotify,
Yeah.
where it's broken into tiers going down. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
something
Okay.
like that. Anyways, all this has absolutely nothing to do with what I was going to talk about today.
Oh, really? Okay. Weird.
Just completely unrelated. This is one of those episodes where, like, if the first 20 minutes didn't filter a new listener, then they're they're on board.
Yeah.
No,
Sometimes you just gotta what do they call them? The rent lowering gunshots. You just gotta like talk about weird shit for a little bit at the beginning of your
that
episode.
is absolutely that is absolutely what we do when we spend 20 minutes not talking about the subject of the episode. Is the rent lowering gunshots of the podcast.
One of the main podcasts that I listen to is a thing called Blank Check, which is a movie podcast that a lot of the episodes are 3 hours long, and they don't talk about the movie for the first hour.
Oh my god!
So like, get good, I guess.
Oh, wow. See, I just can't fathom having the time in my life to spend an entire 3 hours every episode talking about whatever. But I mean, that's why these things get split up into parts if they go that long. Anyways, Niall, this week I was feeling very much in the mood for a nice little story about a ghostly haunting. Okay? So I thought to myself, what kinds of locations might be novel for a ghost story? We've talked about a lot of different things. Hotels, old houses, ships, cemeteries. There's a lot of good locations, and I was like, I want something new, something fresh, something I can sink my teeth into, something that feels it gives off a certain vibe. And so that brought me to a kind of place that we've never talked about in a ghost story as far as I can recall. So this will be the story of the paranormal activity that supposedly goes on at the St. Augustine Lighthouse.
No, I don't think we've done a lighthouse.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I was like, I realized I'm not sure we've ever done a museum either. Maybe I'll look for a haunted museum. That'd be fun.
Museum would be good. The other one that I was thinking is like, surely there's an old bank. I was thinking like, what if there was an old-timey like Wild West bank where shootouts happened? Surely that would create ghost stories. That was my thinking. But I ended up finding this thing about the lighthouse, and it's apparently a really, really well-known location for haunting stuff. Those BuzzFeed guys who do haunted location investigations, and like one of them's a skeptic and one of them's a diehard believer. The Paranormal Try guys.
One of them cheated on his wife. Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah. There's a whole thing about one of the Try guys cheated on his wife, and they had to. He got kicked off the show, and like all the other ones like did like a public apology. It was like a whole thing. But now that guy is doing a podcast about people who talk about the lowest moments of their life, and he had his ex-wife on it who was like very much resenting him during it. I've only filtered this through like clips and people talking about it, but it seems like a incredibly uncomfortable situation to try to put as a podcast.
What the fuck? Okay, so I looked up the Try Guys, and I don't think these are the same people I'm talking about.
No, you're talking about BuzzFeed Unexplained or whatever the fuck it's called.
Okay.
I knew what you were talking about. I just was doing a fun thing, Ray.
I just completely believed what you were saying. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know the Try Guys also did a paranormal YouTube show. Yeah, BuzzFeed. The BuzzFeed blokes. I don't know what their names are. So it's very popular. And there's ghost tours and all that stuff. So, but here's why this place is interesting. It's one of those locations whose history runs so deep, it feels like ghost stories were inevitable. And there's been multiple iterations of this lighthouse, but the location and things that could be associated with that were like built on the land where the lighthouse now stands, that history goes back hundreds of years. So the lighthouse, of course, sits in St. Augustine, Florida, and that city is got its own wild history because it's extremely old. Mm-hmm. It's actually so St. Augustine is the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement in the entire United States. So the Spanish were there It was actually originally founded in September of 1565 by Spanish Admiral Pedro Menendez de Aviles, and it was named for the feast day of St. Augustine. So for 200 years, the Spanish just had control of Florida, and they would establish St. Augustine as the capital city. Now, of course, later the British would come in and take control of the area, and but even when the British had control, and they apparently separated Florida into East and West Florida, even then they considered St. Augustine the capital. So that happened. The United States then, of course, will come and get the place in 1819. Now, St. Augustine, the city, is about 40 miles south of Jacksonville. It has a bunch of tourist attractions, and that would be things like forts that were once used by the Spanish. But, of course, they have the haunted lighthouse. And the actual museum that's there has a whole blog dedicated to talking about the history of the place. So if you wanted to just go in and read super, super in-depth history of this location, you can. Mm-hmm. It's pretty well documented. I will say the thing that's truly tragic is that in 1970, we'll get to this, but in 1970 there was a fire, and so some stuff was lost. Some information about the spot was lost, and the people who lived there and the house. So it's... But because it's been there for so long and stuff has happened there for so long, there's a pretty deep history. So 1589, the Italian cartographer Giovanni Battista Boesio, there's a map that he creates of the raid of Sir Francis Drake on St. Augustine that happened 3 years before he made this map. And this map is actually the documentation that they have that references the existence of a wooden watchtower at the end of Anastasia Island. That's where the St. Augustine Lighthouse will end up. So, all the way back in the 16th century, there is a watchtower where a lighthouse will eventually be to this day.
Okay, so there was a structure there that will then be kind of built over until you get this lighthouse. Sure. Okay.
Yes. So, the Spanish are there. Basically they're trying to keep enemy ships out, so they have this watchtower that's built there. And they're there for a very long time. They actually take the original construction, and replace it with this 30-foot tall watchtower made of, coquina, which I guess is shell rock. So they use wood and shell rock. Which is, I only point the detail out because later, like I said, the Spanish will then get kicked out, and the British will come in, and then the British will get kicked out, and the Spanish will come back. And when the Spanish come back, they actually rebuild it again using this specific set of material. And I don't know what the significance of that is, other than it just... Because when they come back, when the Spanish return, it then for a while is a watchtower again. It goes from watchtower to sort of a lighthouse to then watchtower, which just... I don't know exactly what the details, like what this looks like, but apparently something to do with the Spanish system of running this place. The watchtower was I guess, more important than a proper lighthouse for whatever reason. So they had a canoe in the 18th century, 1737, that they would basically just use this canoe around the area to warn people of approaching vessels. Mm-hmm. And so that was their, I guess, method of signaling potential enemies approaching. Now, of course, Spain and Britain are at war, right? And there is this story from this time that the Spanish captain Juan de Leon Fandino, who took the British captain Robert Jenkins, who I guess they they took this guy in after they accused him of smuggling in the area, and Juan de Leon Fandino apparently cut off the left ear of the British captain to get back at him for his smuggling operation. And apparently British press just like went crazy over this story. And it had to do with them fighting over Caribbean trade routes ultimately. But
I thought you were supposed to cut off the fucking hands of thieves if we're going for that kind of system.
I mean, I don't know. I apparently it was his ear. It was his stealing ear that they cut off. You know, this was the ear that he would use to like. He would basically creep up on crates and he'd put his ear against and he'd go, "Yep, this one's good for stealing." And they just wanted to, you know, rob him of that. He was honestly one of the world's first ear-based thievery. So just keep that in mind. That's probably why they cut off his ear. Okay. So a bunch of stuff happens in the 18th century. Probably one of the more interesting things is they establish this place called Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose, a fort. And the governor, Manuel de Montiano, they basically create this community for slaves who are escaping from English territories in the Americas. So this fort would wind up being composed, like the people who lived there were lots and lots of runaway slaves. And these people would wind up being a core part of the community in St. Augustine moving forward. So it's like, but this was like, you know, because the British planters relied on slavery and they weren't stoked about the escaping slaves, the British forces would then come and occupy Fort Mose in 1740 and then destroy it. So in retaliation for harboring freed slaves, they basically are like, "Fuck you, we're going to destroy your entire fort." Now, a little over a decade later, the Spanish would then rebuild the fort, and then more of the free folks would come to live there. And this is very interesting. Fort Mose was the first free African American community in the United States. So when you think of people who would be, you know, freed from slavery, or even prior to the Civil War, people who had managed to escape slavery, this was a safe haven for you. Which is ironic because of the things that will happen later.
Sure.
So then there's the 7 Years' War, and that's when Florida is ceded to the British. And so here the British come in, they take this Spanish watchtower, and they grow it up by 30 feet. They take a pump and they pump it up by 30 feet. And this is the reason that we know about this is because there's a 1764 archive of French charts that show that this is when the tower became a lighthouse. So
we have actual records of all of that. Okay, cool.
Yes, it's pretty crazy, honestly. But there is this 1780, A Plan of the Harbor of St. Augustine, Province of Georgia, by J.F.W. DeBar, Esquire, in the Atlantic Neptune, and this is where it says it uses the word lighthouse on Anastasia Island, which is where this lighthouse would wind up being. Then in 1794, A Plan of Harbor of St. Augustine by Captain N. Holland. They identify again a lighthouse on Anastasia Island, and the map, I guess, was drawn with this symbol of smoke coming from the top of the tower, which I think is just a fun little detail. Now, they have a lighthouse properly here, but they also had a bunch of shipwrecks, which I think is another one of the reasons why this place boasts the haunting sense to it, because presumably people died in these shipwrecks. the HMS Industry, which actually the museum archaeologists who work here, who would later work in this location, they've studied the actual wreck of this ship. And the HMS Industry sank off of the sandbar in St. Augustine in 1763. Well, they were carrying just a bunch of shit. They were carrying cannon, which I think is like munitions. But this ship, their stuff, it had the crest of King George II in the British Navy, and they were trying to get to Fort Matanzas, and they had all these supplies. It was iron bar stock, axes, and grindstones, which were presumably for building a new colony. And then on New Year's Eve, 1782, about 16 ships wrecked in the harbor, and these were ships that were being used by the British to try and evacuate Charleston, which was then known as Charlestown in South Carolina, after the Americans had a victory in the Revolutionary War.
It's very funny to me that, like, at some point in history, we were like, Charlestown? Nah, let's make that a little easier on everybody.
Well, no, for sure. I think, though, that it almost reads like people talking about the place morphed over time as people spoke more colloquially. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, It's like, it is kind of cool that it went from Charlestown to Charleston. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Because, basically everything that ends with that ton in the United States is probably formerly a town. That was its name before. So, yeah, they're like fleeing the United States, the British, and they just wreck 16 ships in the harbor. And that's, I don't know, that's just like it's just fucking crazy to me, right? Like, the idea that, but I think the idea is that they were fleeing en masse in such a way that there were so many ships that it just was congested and people just wrecked.
They had kind of a traffic jam situation.
Bit of an emergency escape. So that's a lot of the wild stuff. A lot of stuff also happens in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century, but the big thing, which I already kind of mentioned, is the British. They give Florida back to the Spanish in 1783, and like I said, for whatever reason, they end up making the lighthouse back into a bit more of a watchtower, and they take the coquina and stuff and remake it into this watchtower. Now this is also very interesting. This second Spanish period that the museum refers to in their blog, they say that the oldest families in St. Augustine to this day can trace their lineage back to the Spanish who returned here, because these people had fled Florida when the British showed up, and then they fled for Cuba. And then when the British were kicked out and the Spanish came back into control, they came back from Cuba. So they come back, they turn it into a watchtower, and then eventually it becomes a lighthouse again. And the other thing that they point out is that sometime similar on the timeline, this is when the Fresnel lens is being developed, this engineering project. It's new optics technology.
Okay.
And it allows the light from the lighthouse to be, I want to say it was like 25 nautical knots or whatever. That's how far you can see the light using this technology.
Okay.
And there's a whole, if you want to read about this, the entire Fresnel lens engineering history is like on the blog. It's apparently super important to lighthouses and the systems there.
That would make sense. Like, because it's interesting to think about how lighthouses existed before we really had good flashlight technology. You know, like, you started out with, like, literally just whatever light they could make as big as they could, and it was probably open flames to begin with.
Yeah.
And then over time it becomes, gas-powered and eventually electricity-powered lights and stuff, and with better and better reflective technology and stuff. Like, so yeah, like a big lens breakthrough would drastically change how lighthouses function and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge breakthrough, and my understanding is that the Fresnel lens, I don't know whether it's the first Fresnel lens, because it seems like such like goofy, like technical and archaic stuff, but the Fresnel lens, when it got adopted here, it was like, I want to say something like a full decade after the Fresnel lens was initially developed. And this was due to the slowness of like government financing and like putting these things into play. They took a really long time, and by the time they got to putting this in this particular lighthouse, it was like the fourth generation of the Fresnel lens.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like they didn't even get the the early version of this thing. They only got once they which is, I guess, would be kind of nice, because I feel like the fourth generation of this type of lens would be even better and like more solid and well researched and well implemented compared to the originals. So
yeah,
cool.
no, it's an interesting thing. I just think it's funny that we have the historical record of the government being very slow to implement this.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's even crazier is apparently this lens has been preserved by the people who have come together to preserve the lighthouse and the grounds around it and the buildings around it, which we'll get to those people. That lens is preserved to this day, and I think actually might be the lens that is in the lighthouse currently operating.
Damn.
Which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So an artifact that's very, very old, that again carries paranormal vibes with it. Let's be very clear here. In 1852, before the lens is put in, they build the thing up another 10 feet. They're starting to reach the limits of the pump. And then the lens was lit with an oil lamp that was fueled by whale oil. And the fun historical tidbit here is that during the American Civil War, the Confederate sympathizers in St. Augustine basically stole the lens and the mechanisms around it. And they hid those things and just tried to. The whole point was to try to muck up the Union's ability to make shipments in the area. But apparently, despite all this, the Union would eventually roll up to St. Augustine. They'd come in with Navy gunboats, take over the harbor and city peacefully, actually, and then jail the Confederate sympathetic mayor. And after the Union victory, they re-implemented this Fresnel lens and imported... This is another one of my favorite little tidbits. They then were like, hey, we have like a bunch of Confederate sympathizers down here. We're going to go to the north, and we're just going to just recruit professional lighthouse keepers from the north that we can be certain are not Confederates, and they're just going to come down here and replace them in St. Augustine.
It would have been really funny if they accidentally got a Confederate sympathizer from the north to come down,
that would be awkward. So by 1871, the lighthouse was in a little bit of trouble because people realized that this lighthouse was actually the area underneath it was eroding. And if they didn't do something, it was just going to fall into the ocean. So U.S. Congress then took $100,000 and funded a new lighthouse during Florida Reconstruction.
Okay, cool.
So this would be the construction of a 165-foot tower in 1871 being put together by the U.S. Lighthouse Service, and it would be finished 3 years later in 1874. Now, again, if you'll recall, there were a lot of escaped slaves and freemen who would come down to St. Augustine and live there. So a significant number of the people on the historical record having worked on this lighthouse were those people. Which is just, I don't know, it's just something worth knowing about, I think. And so October 15th, 1874, that's when they first light the new lamp inside this first order Fresnel lens for the first time. And so, by the way, the lens that they're using is 9 feet tall. It is taller than a human. And to get to it, basically the keeper at the time, William Russell, he would have had to have just climbed straight up inside this lens to then light it. Which, maybe that whole image made me think of the movie The Lighthouse. This all kind of makes me want to watch that
But
movie
they won't
again.
even let me fuck it.
But yeah, no, there's no information on the historical record of Russell fucking the lens. So, but the thing is, they describe this lens as quote representing the height of Victorian engineering. So, it was a big deal, like I said. Then, 1883, things start to advance. They open up a railroad that goes between Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and Halifax. And the advent of the railroad is a big shot in the gut to the importance of lighthouses, at least at this time, because it makes, intercontinental just stuff easier. And there's this partner, a John D. Rockefeller partner named Henry Flagler, who works in Standard Oil. And he comes to St. Augustine and decides to shape it to his vision. And and again, I had such like a movie brain watching this because I just kept imagining what's his face in There Will Be Blood, which is a bit more exaggerated. But basically, Flagler comes to St. Augustine to turn it into a resort town for the wealthy.
Good. What everyone needs.
He basically is. Basically, the idea is like, hey, all you people up north, Florida is a paradise for weather and holidays and blah blah blah. And so this is part of what starts to transform it into a tourist town. So he builds like hotels. They're planning hotels. The rail lines are coming in. They also still have steamships, and so tourism is starting to really boom in the area. And Flagler takes the railroads that he's running and starts to run them further south into Palm Beach and into Key West. And that he also starts bringing his hotels down there. And it's very funny because for what they refer to this move to develop southward as Flagler's Folly.
Sounds like a military maneuver.
It does. So late 1880s, tourists come and they can visit the island. They can stay at the hotels. They go around by horse-drawn cart, and they're brought around by rowboat for just a nice, pleasant holiday day. And apparently, guests could even occasionally go and just chill in the lighthouse and have like oysters and tea. And the people who built the fires for oyster roasts would be the African-American people who lived there. And they would also be the people who would row the tourists around, and that's how they made money. So, more shipwrecks did occur, apparently. There is, but apparently that was heavily mitigated by the existence of the railroad as well. But they make a point to mention that there was one vessel, a steam engine, that wrecked there, and had when they kind of went in and looked at what was on that, they had barrels of concrete. And what they think it was is that these may have been building materials for a hotel, a Flagler hotel. So Flagler comes in and he changes the vibe of the entire fucking place because it's all about money and tourism. So now, huge fast forward. During World War II, the St. Augustine Lighthouse was utilized by the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard as a base of operation. Guards were set up at the lighthouse, and military tracked every single friendly ship that passed through the nearby waters. The way they talk about the war, I can't get too deep into it because we'd be here forever, but it's like people on the coast were very afraid that that something could happen at any moment. People were living with the shades drawn. People were driving in the evening with their cars like lights off. They didn't want to be noticeable to any potential enemy ships.
Even though it never, other than Pearl Harbor, which was we didn't have a lot of stuff set foot on American soil then.
No, but they're so paranoia of the war, I think, was very high because there's an incident where U-boat 123 destroys the USS Gulf America off the coast of Jacksonville.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So that happens, and that's, again, 40 miles to the north of St. Augustine. So they're concerned that shit's going to be going down on this Florida coast. So that happens. There's a bunch of military stuff at the museum as well because of this. Fast forward a bit more. In 1970, a fire destroyed a significant amount of the lighthouse keeper's house, which by this point had sat vacant for a while.
Okay.
And what I found funny is there's a little bit of a conspiracy here because the museum website refers to the fire as being suspicious, and it points out that the building had officially been declared excess by the government. And the government of St. Johns County, which is where St. Augustine is located, they would end up purchasing this area. They wanted to purchase the property, the keeper's house, and they wanted to just knock it down and put in condominiums. So there is this the blog, the museum's blog, even basically hints like the government conspired to burn the place down. It doesn't say it very explicitly, but they suggest it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. That sounds definitely possible.
But there is a good ending here because by 1980, the place is on the verge of being destroyed. The blog literally says the bulldozers were like there and ready to go. But then the Junior Service League steps in and they pledge to restore the location and develop a museum. And I don't know exactly what the Junior Service League is, but they've got chapters across the United States, and it's like I think it's like a women's support. Like they do a lot of stuff, but it's like a women's group.
Okay.
So these women from the Junior Service League come in and say, "Hey, we'll actually try and turn this into something important and historical for the common good so that we don't just destroy a landmark." So the lighthouse and the surrounding area ends up getting added to the National Register of Historic Places. And then in 1994, a maritime museum is established. It kind of gets merged with another museum in 1998, and there's still a museum there to this day. And I think it's just free to go in and check out.
Cool.
Now, not too much for our purposes has happened there historically since then. But for our purposes, and because I know you're probably wondering now, what about the ghosts?
Yeah, I was starting to wonder.
Well, now we know there's a bunch of different eras of this lighthouse, and so we can talk about the ghosts. And there's one particularly grim story behind 3 of the ghosts. So this is the most famous story. And it's in 1871. This is going to be during the construction project era. So this is the final version of the lighthouse when they would recreate it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So Hezekiah Pitty, this guy moves from Cape Elizabeth, Maine, with his family to help with this new St. Augustine Lighthouse. He is actually the superintendent of lighthouse construction, and so he's an important guy to have at your new lighthouse building. So he would live on site with his family. That would be his wife, Mary, and their children, Mary Adelaide, Eliza, Edward, and Carrie. Now, the Pitty children, while they're living there, there's not a lot to do. And what they end up doing is they take this construction site that they live on and they turn it into a playground.
Of course.
And so these children and the children of workers would all gather around together and just do whatever the hell children did in 1871.
Hoop stick.
Hoop stick, whatever. Yeah.
Now, too sad they grew up on a construction site before nail guns were a thing, you know?
That would have been really fun and way more dangerous. But all this is really proving to me is that even in the 19th century, without nail guns, you can still kill children. So By 1873, they only really had the foundation built. There were 42 feet built out, but the plans were to have a 165-foot tower. And what they had on this site was this railway cart. And the cart would take the supplies from the ships on the docks and then run that on rails to the site so they could build. And what the children would do is they would ride the cart. One of their favorite activities was just basically playing real life Minecraft and riding in carts.
Oh, see, I went straight to Donkey Kong Country. You know,
Sure,
they were doing, but yeah, Minecraft. The kids know Minecraft.
It's, whatever you like. I mean, I prefer Donkey Kong Country, but Minecraft, unfortunately, Minecraft has won the cultural battle.
Here's a thing that just about me. I have played a lot of Fortnite. I have never actually. Well, okay, I technically fucked around on the web version of Minecraft when it first came out for an hour tops, but I somehow have entirely missed Minecraft.
Oh, well, I played Minecraft way back in the day when it was a browser thing, and I played it way back in the day when it first came out, and I put lots and lots of hours with friends in high school into Minecraft, and then I stopped playing.
Yeah.
And then it got picked up by Microsoft and whatever. And I think the last time I had a big Minecraft excursion was in quarantine. When I had nothing else to do, I had some friends who were just like, hey, let's all play Minecraft together. And we did. And we played for like a week. And it was pretty fun. And then we didn't play again anymore. But you can ride minecarts around in Minecraft. And unlike Minecraft, though, the children were not blown up by TNT. No. They would just basically ride this thing around as a roller coaster, and then they would push it back up to the site to ride it down again.
There's something very funny about these kids having last name Pity, and their main game is that they hang out and like on a construction site and ride a cart down a hill. Like it's kind of sad in a way that feels little lemony snickety.
Yeah, a little bit. It really does. So the way that this is so fucked. The way that they stopped the cart when it was pushed down into the harbor is there was just a wooden board that would stop it. So these...
That's not good, guys.
Don't laugh, Niall. Children are dead, okay? It's been a while, but...
Well, look, tragedy plus time equals comedy, and
true.
this was what, the 1800s? We're good.
That's true. So the three Pity sisters, who were... The two of them were young teenagers, and then one of them was 4 years old. So
That's a bad beat.
July 10th, 1873, they're riding along on this thing, and it's the three Pity sisters, and here's a very historically telling thing, a fourth girl who was a black girl who nobody knows who she is.
Sure.
And they think that her father may have been somebody who worked on the construction of the lighthouse. These four girls are riding the cart together. We do not have a historical document about who this fourth girl was, presumably because she is not white. And the wooden board that is supposed to stop the cart when they go down it is just not there when they ride it down that day. And the cart flips into the water, and the girls become trapped underneath. A young black man named Dan Sessions, who is a construction site worker, sees this happen, and he runs to the water, jumps in, tries to save them, and he uses, all his strength to upend this cart. And by the time he's managed to lift it up, three of the four girls are drowned. And the one who actually survives is the youngest one, the 4-year-old named Carrie. And apparently for a few days after the accident happens, they shut down the construction site and they have a funeral for these girls. Now, the Pitti family, after the funeral, would then go to back to Maine, their hometown, and that's where they would actually bury their children. Jesus, what a terrible sentence. But so even though their ghosts supposedly haunt this place, they're not buried there. And then the worst part of this story at the very end, quote, staff researchers have not yet been able to find the final resting place of the young African-American girl, but they're working on it. Apparently they're trying to find out who this was and where she's buried.
Good.
Yeah.
So we have three. Okay, so we have three child ghosts.
Yes.
What do they? What's their deal? What do they do when they're ghosts?
Well, there have apparently been a lot of reports in the nearly 150 years since this all went down. So, one thing that you'll see repeated everywhere, no matter which ghost it is that lighthouse keepers will claim to hear footsteps in the keeper's house. And they'll, like, even in the lighthouse too, although the three girls are less associated with the lighthouse itself and more the keeper's house, since that would have been where they lived. Mm-hmm. So one of the lighthouse keepers is just in the house. It's very vague, but they say in the 1950s. And he apparently hears footsteps upstairs, goes to investigate, and doesn't find anybody. But then there's they do give a name. Head keeper James Pippin from 1953 to 1955. He's the keeper at the time, and was actually the last keeper to live there. And so he would claim, quote, the big house was haunted and he would not stay another night in it. And he actually moves out to a smaller coastal lookout building. So the story goes that he was freaked out enough by a possible haunting that he would move out and just live elsewhere.
Okay.
Now, by 1955, the lighthouse lamp is a fully automated process, so they don't need as many hands-on people there. And so lighthouse keepers were now just lamp lighters, and so you didn't really have to live on site so much. Mm-hmm. So the lamplighter would just come, light the lamp when they needed to, and then go and live elsewhere. So for a while, what they end up doing is they take this keeper's house, which is like, it's surprisingly big. I've seen videos of it. It's like not a small building. And they would rent it out for a while. So there was like a leather goods crafter who rented the property in the 60s, and he claims that he would wake up one night and he would look, and at the foot of his bed is a small girl. And he would blink his eyes and look at her, and when he blinked, she would just disappear. Now, during the renovation of the site by the women of the Junior Service League, supposedly workers and volunteers also experienced strange happenings and unexplained incidents. This is a thing that's said on the museum's blog, but they don't get into specific details. But the suggestion that they make is that these people claimed that while they worked on the site, the area that seemed to be the most active paranormal areas for hauntings was the basement of the keeper's house. And they think that a big reason, it's sort of implied that a big reason this might be is because when the place was on fire in 1970, the basement was one of the only places in the house that kind of went untouched damage-wise.
Okay.
And I've seen video of this. It's like you're in this like foyer area, and then there's just a big circular hole in the ground and a spiral staircase that goes down into a basement, and everything. I mean, it is just old as fuck. So just picture very old staircase, spiral staircase down into a dank, old, untouched basement.
Yeah, and like So because it's the least having to be rebuilt after the fire, they think since it's more original, that's where the hauntings are concentrated.
That's where the
Okay.
energy has remained, is the implication. And what they say about these three girls, apparently, is that this is one of those times where a lot of these ghosts are benevolent to neutral. It's not so much like a scary haunting as it is like sort of eerie. And the three girls supposedly were are very playful because they're children. So
Yeah, bring them a cart and they're fucking set. Just
yeah.
keep that fucking woodblock there. For the love of
Yes.
God.
For the love of God, keep the woodblock there. We can't have a ghost drowning incident. So these girls, one of the things that they sort of imply is that the basement might be one of the play places of these three girls. But I also read a lot of things of people saying the other ghosts who are adults are down there. But apparently the three girls are the most active spirits there, and the museum claims that they've actually brought in psychics who can come in and contact these spirits, and the museum's blog claims that even though they don't have any official record of the young black girl who died with these girls, they do claim that a psychic that they talked to was able to get in contact with the young black girl and determine that her name was Ellie or Eleanor. And they follow up that statement by saying, quote, "We continue our archival research and hope to find historical evidence one day to confirm this information. But for now, we have to rely on this psychic."
Yeah, the only thing we have to go on is a psychic. So that psychic is really hoping we don't find historical information that doesn't back that up, you know?
It's also just there's something that feels a little criminal about being like, history has not given us a record of this poor, black girl's death because she's not white, and now we can exploit that by, having a psychic medium come in and explain it to us, and I don't know, it just feels very cynical. Now, the thing that people claim is that these girls will try and play hide and seek with you. So guests, unsuspecting people who come to the lighthouse will basically see girls like peeking around corners and trying to hide from you. There's a story how one of the staff members at the lighthouse was closing up for the night, and he could hear giggling at the top of the tower. And so he thinks that somebody was actually left on the top of the tower, and when he goes up to check, he finds it's empty. This is another recurring story, but it's not always giggles. Sometimes it's other things. It's just footsteps or whatever.
Yeah. I would be kind of annoyed if I worked at a lighthouse and I kept hearing like noises at the top and then no one was there, so I had to keep going up and down the fucking stairs of the lighthouse every night, you know?
I want to go home. Man, yeah. I want to go. I will play hide and seek. I know ghosts don't have a concept of time and work-life balance, but I'm going home. So, and he goes up and down this lighthouse and finds nobody. And this is the story that they attribute to the game of hide and seek, where like he hears this girl like giggling up and he can't find them. I also think it could just be because she's a ghost.
Yeah, I do think that, like, I feel like people really want child ghosts to want to play the game hide and seek when, like, this is a thing that comes up in multiple haunting stories whenever there's a kid ghost. Like, if they're not, like, if it's not the most tragic thing you've ever heard and they're, like, vengeful or whatever, a lot of times they are thought of as playful. But that kind of just feels like what you would do if you're a ghost. Is like, you may not have full control over your visibility, so you're just like doing your shit and looking around, and people are just like, "Oh, she wants to play hide and seek with me." No, I'm just living, you know. I'm just not living. I'm
not
ghost,
living.
but...
Yeah, it's a ghost. I mean, it's a big question of like how aware a ghost is of what it's doing, or do they? What's the Barkley Shut Up and Jam? Ghosts are like dogs; they just sort of act arbitrarily. But somebody out there is going to know what I'm referencing. But there's of course there's ghost tours around the lighthouse and its surrounding infrastructure and the land around there. And so with these tours come ghost sightings that guests claim to have had. My personal favorite one is the following, because apparently there was a woman. They do these things called Dark of the Moon tours, which I was like, what is that, a Transformers thing? But no, apparently it's a ghost tour that they do. And this one of the guests, this woman, is on the first step of the lighthouse staircase, and she stops for a moment, and then she starts to try and take her first step up to the tower and finds that somebody has tied her shoelace to the staircase. And they attribute this to the playfulness of one of the child ghosts. You know, take
Look,
that as you will.
like, it's... Sure,
I like
it's playful. I guess it's more playful on the first step than on the 100th, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
exactly.
I'll give you that one, kid, sure.
Exactly. They also talk about how people would bring EMF meters, these electromagnetic frequency readings, to try and capture, because this is one of the theories that the diehard paranormal investigators follow, is that like you can measure this activity through EMF meters, because they're like manipulating electrical activity or whatever. And supposedly the woman who brought this EMF meter asked the spirits, do you want to play hide and seek? And when they did that, the meter spiked. And so what she did was she wanders around with this meter trying to find the hiding ghost girls. And she would end up finding that the meter would spike again when she got to the spiral staircase that went up to the main floor of the keeper's house. And it was like under that staircase. And when she saw the meter spike when she stood in that spot, she apparently then said, she found you. Like, she basically declared, I found you. Do you want to play again? And when she said that, the meter spiked.
Now, has anyone who's been doing this ever just yelled "Ollie Ollie oxen free" and see what happens? You know,
that's a good point. Yeah, or like a ghost in the graveyard would be apropos. You know, did you ever play that one?
Not as much, no. So I'm a little hazy on the rules, but I know of it.
Ghost in a Graveyard I would always play it in the pool with my friends, and it would be one person had to close their eyes and outstretch their arms, and everybody else had their eyes open, would have to be as quiet as possible in the pool while dodging the person whose eyes are closed and is reaching out trying to catch them. And that would be a pretty good one. So yeah, apparently this woman just walked around with an EMF meter trying to play hide and seek with the girls. And, you know, of course, there's also stories of just people who claim to have seen full-bodied apparitions of just little girls. Somebody claims to have seen a young girl in a Victorian outfit just sitting on a bench reading a book. And this woman, I guess, went up to talk to the young girl and tried to ask her something. And then as she begins to try to ask this girl in the Victorian dress on the bench her question, the group from the tour starts to come up behind her. She turns and looks away from the girl on the bench, and when she turns back around, the girl on the bench is just gone.
Damn. Okay.
And there's also another story about how a woman goes up to another woman on one of the ghost tours, and this woman tells the other woman, oh, your daughter was so well behaved on this tour. And the other woman that she's speaking to says, I don't have a daughter. And then other women on the tours supposedly start saying, well, we saw a little girl by your side this entire night. And then when they check the records, there's no children on the tour from that night.
That's one of those things that would be so fun to, in a way, to do to somebody.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is like, it reads like somebody, a plant on a ghost tour trying to make things spookier. And it would probably be really funny, or fun, I guess. But I mean, when you think about that, how many stories from ghost tours of people supposedly experiencing something crazy, how many of those are people being, messed with by the tour itself? I'm curious, because they have to do that. right?
Yeah, like, because, look, ghost tours, I think a lot of people see ghost tours as just the spirit of it's a good story and you go out and see it as kind of a sightseeing thing. But there are people who I think would look for something to actually happen. And I think there would be places that would do faked small scale, parapsychology type stuff where you have a thing that like it knocks under the table or, like small little things that would make people believe they saw something weird because it would be good business,
Yeah, exactly. That has to happen. So aside from the 3 ghosts of the little girls, there are 4 other ghosts of adults that some of them, I guess, died tragically on the lighthouse grounds, or at least that's the way the story's told, but when I looked into it, it's not quite accurate. But we have 3 lighthouse keepers and a lighthouse keeper's wife, who is also a lighthouse keeper, by the way.
But we got to separate them for some reason?
I don't know why, but that's how it's written about in some places online, and I'm just like, when I looked into her, I was like, dude, no, she was also a keeper. Like, after her husband
White
died.
House keeper, 4 lighthouse keepers.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So 7
2
deaths,
of them just happened
supposedly.
to be married.
And again, the story that is told is that there are 7 deaths on the grounds of the St. Augustine Lighthouse, which is also factually inaccurate when I looked into it. But whatever. So we've got William Harn. He worked on the lighthouse from 1875 to 1889. And the Harn family, they have their own interesting history. They're actually pretty well documented because William took part in the Civil War as a member of the Union. Their story's cool and all, but not that, we don't have to get into it. Basically, he died and became a ghost on May 31st, 1889. And he died after having a fight with malaria and tuberculosis. And the thing that I read is that even though he's listed as working on the lighthouse clear up until 1889, because of his illnesses, his wife must have been taking over his duties for at least like a year. So he was sick for long enough, and then towards the end of his life, the last year of his life, he was so fucked up that the only explanation for the duties getting done is that his wife, who goes I don't think she's unnamed, but I should have written her name down, now I'm realizing it. But I'm sure you can go find her name. The Mrs. Harn. Oh, shit. I did the thing that our stories typically do. Purely by accident.
The wife of Harn, yeah.
The wife of Harn. Mrs. Harn presumably took over the duties while he was dying for like a year, which sounds horrible. Yeah. But because of the tragic illness that killed him, and I do believe this guy actually died on the grounds, the thing that comes with him specifically as a spirit that haunts the area is workers and guests claim that they have been in the parlor room of the keeper's house and they've heard disembodied coughing.
Okay. Ghostly coughing is one of those things that I think would be confusing at first, and then it kind of undercut, because like, okay, what am I trying to get at here? There are spooky things that could happen with a haunting. Coughing isn't really one of them. Like, coughing, yeah. I feel like I would kind of get annoyed with before I was scared with it,
Yeah. Well, it's funny to think, because, like, I don't know if I've read too many stories about ghosts, because usually if ghosts are making noises, it's footsteps or knocking, and not typically, like, bodily functions.
Yeah. Other than, wasn't there like a farting
there was a
ghost
farting
or something?
there was the farting ape, I think.
Yeah.
But like, can you imagine if you were in a place that was haunted by a ghost that sneezed every once in a while because it died of the cold, and you would just catch yourself saying Gesundheit, and then you'd be like, oh right, that's a ghost. They don't need to hear that.
Yeah. God wants
God has forsaken
them. Yeah. And that's what I would say to the ghost instead of God bless you or something.
God has forsaken you.
It's, yeah, it's more fitting.
So yeah, disembodied coughs, because he was killed by tuberculosis and malaria. Then, of course, there's Joseph Andrew, the keeper of the original lighthouse before its reconstruction. This guy fell to his death from atop the tower in December of 1859 while he was painting it. And what is so unbelievable about this one to me is that I actually have a snippet of his obituary. Do you know what they wrote in his obituary at the time?
It would be weird if I did, I think.
They detail exactly how he died and how quickly he was killed and what killed
Did he
him.
get pancaked by a dump truck?
That's exactly what I was thinking about. It's like, Norm, you don't put this stuff in an obituary anymore. But here's a snippet of his obituary. It says, quote, "The lashing of the scaffold suddenly gave way and he was precipitated to the ground, killing him almost instantaneously. He first struck the roof of the oil room about 30 feet below, whence he glanced off and struck the stone wall, which encloses the lighthouse, and thence to the ground, a stone pavement." So
He got splatted. Jesus.
he fucking hit multiple things on his way down and splatted. And that's just in his obituary. Nothing, I mean, I didn't read the full obituary. I just thought that part was really funny. And they're just like, so anyways, here's how brutally this guy died. Here's how badly God took him out.
They might as well have put yakety sax under it, you know? It's
It's awesome. It's fucked up, but it's very funny to me. The idea of just, I mean, we literally just referenced a comedy sketch show that makes its entire joke is about not putting the details of one's death in an obituary. Mm-hmm. It's just not normally what you do. But apparently they used to. So fast forward, and in the early 1900s, the keeper was Peter Rasmussen, a man who lived basically a full life, as I understand it, but apparently died on the lighthouse grounds in 1926. And it's said that Rasmussen was very strict about his duties as a lighthouse keeper, making sure that the lamp was always functional. He was very on time with everything and strict about doing it exactly the way it's supposed to be done. But he also is said to have despised tourists who came to the location. And then Rasmussen and Andrew are also said to have shared a hobby, smoking cigars. Okay. And so, paranormal activity that is attributed to both of these guys is the disembodied scent of a smoked cigar. So if you're walking around the place, you can sometimes just smell cigar smoke.
Also, maybe they occasionally, toke up some blunts, and so sometimes you'll just, get a quick sniff of that.
Yeah, that
chief,
sticky, icky. Yeah. You're walking around. And...
No, that's the lighthouse. That's the people who are working at the museum now smoking behind the fucking...
Yeah. When you're outside
house,
and you smell that Zaza,
Yeah.
Now, there's also eerie stories of the sound of pacing footsteps being heard at the top of the lighthouse tower climbing the spiral staircase. Like I mentioned, when it's investigated, it's revealed that there's nobody there. People also describe seeing a tall, hazy male figure dressed in this blue worker outfit, and it's a full body apparition. They've seen that inside the lighthouse, but most notably it gets seen in the basement of the keeper's house. And I mentioned it's eerily untouched and old as hell with that spiral staircase. So you have to imagine a tall, creepy spirit in a dark, dank room in the basement of this place.
Which so far that is the creepiest ghost that we've talked about. In terms of actually scaring me.
It's creepy, but also there's never any stories about the ghosts doing anything or behaving a certain way to people outside of the little girls playing hide and seek. This thing's just there. They just see it standing there, which I guess is its own creepiness, right? But yeah. Now the final ghost was actually the wife of Joseph Andrew. Her name was Maria Andrew, and her story is pretty cool. She was the first Hispanic woman to serve in the Coast Guard and became the keeper of the lighthouse after her husband died. So she actually assumes the lighthouse keeper role in early January of 1860. Now, the hole poked in the story, even though she gets referred to as one of the ghosts, she actually moved away from St. Augustine to Georgia after working there for a while, and she would just live the rest of her life in obscurity. There's no information about her when she moves away.
Sure.
So what this means, though, is that presumably she did not die on the grounds of the St. Augustine Lighthouse, but nonetheless, she gets grouped in as a ghost that haunts the place.
And she also didn't seem to die tragically.
No tragedy there. Her husband died. I guess the implication is I'm sad my husband died on the lighthouse, and that they printed every detail of how he fell down in the newspaper or whatever. So maybe her grief over that. I don't know. But much like the children, she's usually spoken of as more benevolent. And like all the other ghosts I mentioned, she causes a lot of the same activity. But her unique identifier as a ghost in the area is that she would typically appear on the grounds around the lighthouse. And I wish I had more details on this, but supposedly appearing on the grounds, she will show up there and for somehow help visitors who are there. So I don't know if she's like guiding people to different locations or something.
Hey, don't walk
They don't
on the
really
grass.
say. Yeah, something like that. But then her other little unique detail is that supposedly you can see her at the top of the lighthouse just hanging out there during afternoon storms. Now, a couple things that aren't attributed to anybody in particular. There was actually reports of this very large male figure that would hang out also in the basement. And what it is supposedly doing when it's seen is that it would just go to the cisterns in the basement to collect water. And so people claim to have seen this thing collecting water. It's spirit trying to collect water. And what people think it was is that it was maybe a sailor or another lightkeeper. And the story that is completely unconfirmed is that this is the ghost of somebody, either a sailor or a lightkeeper, who hung themselves in the 1930s. But there's no historical record to suggest that
they
this
just
is true.
made that one up. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other one that I couldn't find any historical record is that like a dozen or so pirates are supposedly buried around there.
Sure.
Because piracy was a problem back in the, whenever times pirates were around. And that there's like a dozen, maybe more pirates that are supposedly
Sure, why not?
buried
Why
there.
not 100? Fuck it.
Yeah.
You're like,
Fuck
yeah,
it.
sure, why not?
It like I get where that's coming from, but like I can't hear ghost pirates without it just conjures images of Pirates of the Caribbean in my mind.
Yeah.
But hey, that is the St. Augustine Lighthouse.
All right.
It's a very famous haunted location that does a lot of ghost tours. But what I kind of appreciate about it is it's not just about the ghost tours. It's a museum that has tons and tons of like a deep well of history. And so that's its actual primary thing. And then some people just really want to go and hear about the 3 dead girls.
Yeah,
So-
the 3 dead children and then like 4 lighthouse keepers. It's it is interesting, the variance of like, we have a weird take on ghosts in America where it's like our stuff's really not that old, and sometimes it's not even tied to an actual tragedy. It's just like we just like the woman who moved away, like there's no reason for her to be some sort of spirit still tied to that lighthouse, really. And so it kind of stretches the bounds of what we think of as ghosts in America. Like the kids make sense. The kids died there tragically. It was, it's something that you can picture as like, it probably sent shockwaves through the town of like this awful thing where 3 children died. And, like that makes sense that there would be ghosts from that. But of the other ones, the guy that got pancaked, sure, but mostly the other ones are just like, yeah, they just lived and then they died, and so why are they haunting this place? I don't know.
Yeah, it's mostly
interesting.
it's almost by association,
Yeah.
like the wife, just having her being a part of this story is, I think, just her association with her husband who actually just got pancaked by the lighthouse.
Yeah.
So, I just think that like you have 1 or 2 major tragedies surrounding this place, and it's so fucking old, and those 2 things can combine to just turn into a ghost mythology.
I do really like how in almost every place like this where they have ghosts listed, there are a couple that even they don't have like a justification for. Like that guy that was hanged in the 30s, they got nothing on that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it still is going to make their list because they want to have like a full page of ghosts,
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff where it's like, sure, yeah, there's a couple more, why not? And it's just like 2 sentences on the webpage and that's it.
The thought, though, for me, that I could go to this place and do a ghost tour and just experience a bunch of cool historical stuff, I mean, that's the ideal ghost thing. There's so many places that just live and die. No pun intended. I get not pun, but there's a lot of places that live and die by the fact that they're supposedly a haunted location and they've got nothing else to show you. But this is so much more than that. And it's so, I mean, the fact that this goes hundreds of years back is really cool to me. Pre-United States actual ownership of Florida, or whatever you want to call it. And it's, it's just very interesting. It's very cool. And I like the story, except for the part where children were killed. That sucks, but...
no, it's your favorite part.
No, come on. Don't... People are going to quote that out of context and, like, take snippets of it, and they're going to edit me saying, yes, look, Niall, I agree.
Look, you weren't the one that got called out for laughing at it, so between us, people make a really nice edit where we both come off very callous towards child death.
That's very true. So, Niall, with all of that in mind, are you ready for a big question? I'm
so ready.
Okay. When the newspaper inevitably publishes the exact details of your death, when you die, what will that snippet from your obituary look like? The part where they describe in detail how you died.
So I don't have every piece of it because that and why will make sense in a second. But I do think that I want some sort of Final Destination-esque scenario.
Okay.
Where I'm in a room by myself. I'm not like, there's no evidence of foul play, but a series of Rube Goldberg-esque coincidences and happenstance leads me, whether it's like in the first movie in the bathroom where you get choked by the fucking drawstring thing, or if it's, I doubt it'll be like Final Destination 5 where someone dies horrifically at a gymnastics studio, because I don't think I'm going to be hanging out there. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do the log death from Final Destination 2. I'm driving behind a fucking log truck, and various things happen leading to it impaling me.
Sure. Okay. So you want you need them to cover the Final Destination vibes of the whole scenario.
Yeah, I think like that level of tension and kind of like I do like a good. I saw Mr. Bean at a pretty early age. I saw kind of Mr. Magoo and stuff. Like, I like the world happening around a person who's kind of oblivious, and then it, like, the upshot is some ridiculous thing happening to them, and Final Destination is that. So, yeah, I think I want some sort of elaborate Rube Goldberg-esque mechanism of death personified coming in and... wiping me out just in a grand fashion.
Yeah. Okay. Mine's not totally dissimilar, because I've always sort of imagined that what would happen to me and what they'll inevitably report on in the newspaper is I'll be walking along one day, just whistling.
You were walking down the street just the other day?
Yeah, whistling a merry tune to myself. Maybe I'm reading something. Maybe I'm reading like a funny book, like a really funny book, and I'm laughing and whistling. And then I inadvertently step on a skateboard that a child's left out.
Sure. As they want to do.
And I've got one foot on the skateboard and one leg up in the air, and I'm like, whoa, like waving my hands, and I start to roll down a hill. And then I imagine it would talk about how I then hit a tree at the base of the hill, smack dab right into that tree, and a bee's nest falls from the tree and just perfectly, like a helmet, falls over my head. And the bees start stinging me. And I'm sort of like flailing around trying to get away from the bees, but they're on my head, so it's very hard. And then I step on a rake, and the rake kind of jumps up and thwaps me in the face. And then I fall backwards onto the ground into an anthill, and the ants just start crawling all over me. And then it starts to rain, and the stuff washes over me, but then it turns into acid rain, and then I start getting eaten away by acid. And then the rain clears up, and then they, take me to the hospital, and I die from a heart attack.
Yeah, I think that's all. Like, you put all that stress on your heart by way of all the kind of, because when you first started the it started kind of Simpsons-y, you know,
Sure.
like that kind of Homer stepping on a fucking Bart skateboard and going through these kind of ridiculous things. But I do think logically the end, like, I think it would be very funny to go through The Simpsons and see how many situations in that show would lead to someone, whatever character these things are happening to, going through a heart attack. Because I think it would actually be pretty frequent.
Yeah, it is a Simpsons, and I will say it that I will never be able to make Niall laugh with that joke because I've actually done it a dozen times. So I've tapped in that. I don't know why. I can't help but keep returning to like a very cartoony death. I have to imagine that the way I die, it's gonna be like I hope it's like a cartoon. I hope somebody watching me die, it gets to laugh because it's very cartoony, and honestly lacking in bloodshed. For my sake and theirs.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like mine's gonna be more, brutal.
Yeah, yours is pretty horrifying.
But yours is going to be a little more lightly comedic, but also still tragic, So I think that's a good balance.
I want a funny death. I'll say it.
Yeah.
So with all that, Niall, are you ready to take care of some business?
Oh, I'm so ready. All right. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. Wherever you listen to podcasts, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
We're on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. Go check it out. We're also on Twitch, twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. I'm in the final run of the Fire Red Nuzlocke with our friend Colin. It's been a blast. We're having a good time. So tune in for that. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com if you have a good story or, I don't know, more facts about Australia, I guess. Just feel free to hit us up. Let us know how we should refer to you. But we love getting stories about UFOs, ghosts, your thoughts and feelings on episodes. We always like hearing from you, so please go ahead and hit us up there, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. But if you want to support us, you're going to want to go to patreon.com/itgetsweird. We mentioned up front that we have a show on there. So there's a $1 tier. That's just a tip tier. You just say, here's $1. Thanks for doing what you do. But if you want bonus content, you want to hear that show we mentioned about the X-Files at the front of the show, that's going to be at the $2 tier. At the $2 tier, you get It Gets Weird TV, where we talk about weird television every other week. And then at the $5 tier, you're going to get another bonus show in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV called World of Weird, where Niall and I talk about whatever the hell we want. Honestly, a good 15-minute segment of this episode is kind of like a preview for World of Weird as well.
Yeah.
So if that sounds appealing to you, check out the $5 tier. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with our listeners, just like you right now, talking about ghosts and Bigfoots and aliens, everything under the sun in the world of weird. But if you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird Podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for your continued support of the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.